Okay, in this lesson, we are going to explain the effectors. For example, this is an cloner that we clone a lot of bugs here. And this isn't just clone something that you learned in a previous lesson. But now we want to give an effect to this cloner to make them up, rotation, formula, or anything that you want. For doing that, you can first, we can two methods for doing that. If you deselect everything and go to the mograph, and here is the effector, I separate it to better seeing that. Right click for size large. I like it better to see the icons. As you can see, we have a lots of effector that does a special thing for our effector. The first thing is plane. When you select a plane effector, as you can see, we have several tabs for effector, parameter, deformer, and fields. Okay. Most of the settings in the effectors are the same. For example, if you select the formula tab, as you can see, we have the effector, parameter, deformer, and lots of setting here. But the most settings are the same, and I will be explaining them one by one, and you can define. The most important effector is a plane. I explained most setting in this lesson in this plane effector, and then if you are going to, for example, formula delay, I explained other setting that will be add to this that effector. And as I said before, after the effector will be finished, then we'll go into the field, and after that we have a lot of interesting example and idea about the effector, and combine these effectors and the other small and important settings here on the plane and the cloner effect. As you can see, if you assign the plane, if you're going to a cloner, as you can see in the effector tabs, we have nothing. So we have to click and drag the plane effector to this effector of cloner, and as you can see, the effector affect the cloner. I will explain it. And here you can define how much this effector affects the cloner. Another way to assign the plane to or effector to the cloner is to select it. If you select it and then select the plane, it automatically add the effector to the effector tab of the cloner. Okay, we are going to the plane, and I want to explain its properties. This is an basic properties of any common in Cinema 4D. This is on coordination. You can change it, but we have to change it with the fields. I will explain it. This is an effector tab that's it has important setting, but first we're going to the parameter tab. In this parameter tab, we define which behavior this plane or effector does for our cloner. Here, as you can see, we have three parameters that you can change it: position, rotation, and a scale. Okay, I will explain it with a simple explanation now. For example, a position, you can change the position of the cloner objects. In which direction? Y, as you can see, the Y, or X, or the Z. Okay, so in a, for example, my unit is millimeter. You can see it. In a y-axis, it's bring all of the objects of cloner in a y-axis. Why this happen for the cloner? Because we have no fields. In the fields we have here, we have a lots of fields here that I have to explain them in a separate lessons, but it's very easy. So you can see the plane effector in the position. It's bring up all cloner object, all its cubes, just 100 centimeter up in the y-axis. So we need use the fields. a very simple explanation for fields. It's you can define with a shape this effector. You can define the strength of the plane parameter. For example, in this case, is position. Strength of the parameter with a shape. For example, the base example of the linear is the field is this linear field. If you click it, as you can see, we have a linear field with this shape here. You can click and drag it to change. This is our linear shape that control the strength amount of that parameter. Which parameter? The parameter is the position in a y-axis. We bring up in a y-axis is any. Select a plane. As you can see, it's automatically assigned under a plane. And as you can see, this is the direction of the linear field. I will explain them in detail, don't worry. In this direction, we have 100%. In this direction, we have 0. As you can see, all of the collinear are in a 0 in a y-axis. And if we contact the collinear with the linear effect, linear field, as you can see, in this direction, we have 100 extremes of that parameter. And with a linear blending, you're going to the 0. So the linear, the field in a plane controlling the strength of the effectors in a collinear with a shape. You can turn it off and of course use a box field for that. And in the box field here, you can change the size it. For example, here you can simply change the size of your. As you can see, it's control the strength of that parameter that is bringing 100 centimeter up in a y-axis with a box. So fields are very simple and straightforward. It means you can control the shape of the power like that. Interesting. So you can going back to the plane effector in the parameter and change how much do you want to bring it up this direction. Or instead of changing the position, you can changing the scales. If you turn the scales, you can turn the scales uniformly. And as you can see, you can change the scales with that. Here you can move the parameter. Or you can on uniform, you can, for example, turn off uniform scale and in a Y, or for example, a Y scale. Okay, as you can see, you can change the scale of the object with this. Interesting. Or instead of the scale, you can change the rotation parameter. For example, in pitch or in head, as you can see, you can rotate it. It's very easy. Okay, so you can change the shape of the collinear that field. You can turn the linear back and going to the parameter. We need a parameter for changing the position. This is an effector. It's very easy. This is on field. Okay. Going back to the plane in effector here, the effector tab, we have a strength. It means how much that parameter will be affect the collinear. And in here you can add a selection to that. For example, you want to some part of the collinears to affect this parameter. Here you can go to the mograph, and it's very easy. I want to explain the mograph selection. If you select it, a brush will be turned on, and here you can select the collinear. You have to select the collinear, and in a brush, if you click it, you can select any object of that cloner, or you can hold in your middle mouse and drag in a left or right to increase or decrease the size of the brush. And as you can see, you can select with holding shift select some part of the that cloner. And as you can see in a cloner, we have a selection here. It means if you select it, you select these object of the cloner to affect that plane. And after that, you can go into the plane and tell the plane effector with that parameter, with this field, just click and drag these selections. And in this situation, you can just tell the cloner, hey, I just want to affect these box that I selected with the selection here. You can go to the plane and simply backspace to delete it. But we have the selection stored automatically here for us. So I will explain the minimum and maximum in other, but it's changing the overall strength of the maximum of. You can bring it negative or positive. If you, I give you an example with a move spline, you can define it better there. So the minimum maximum is in all of the plane effector that you can. Another tab is parameter that you can define. Don't worry about the transform mode. It means transform space is according to the, for example, effector and the absolute. For example, you can define it better in absolute. As you can see, it's the relative. It means each object, each box of the cloner is relatively going up based on its direction. As you can see, for example, I tell the whole object of the cloner going in a y-axis in this number. For example, this box is here, it's go directly in relative position of its transfer, but absolute means please bring all the objects of that cloner absolutely in this direction. So this direction, this transform is which is it's 0 in a z and 0 in a x and z, and just y. It's bring it exactly. It's collects all of the object in absolute transform that is here. Okay, or you can change it, for example. So this is a difference between, or you can remap it if you want. So you understand it. I will be going to more detail of these in an. I have to explain them better in examples, but you get the idea what is this transfer mode and the transfer space. But the relative and node is the most common. Another box here is color. The color mode is in a field. It means you can control the color here with a field if you want. You can turn the color on or off here. I will explain them more in the field. But for example, if you want to change the color with here in a transfer, as you can see, you can change the color to the red. This is the base color of the cloner, but I want to, for example, change it to the blue or any color that you want. So you have to go into the plane, and in a parameter, this is a field. It means you can turn it off. It means the whole color that you assign in the cloner go to all objects in a cloner, or you can assign it to the effector color. You can assign it to the effector color or the custom color if you want. Custom color, you can define, for example, another color here. As you can see, it's mixing or blending with the blending mode. The color that you selected in a plane mixing the color that you selected in a cloner. As you can see, it's not color. That's not very useful. We use our custom material after that. So you have to learn them on examples. So here you can blend it, subtract, multiple, or divide it that you want, but default is this. And as you can see, if you change the plane effector, it also change the color mode. Here you can change the fields that you want. It's a field color that you have to go into the change the color with the field. But if you add your custom if you add your custom materials, for example, you want to reflective and shiny, go into the reflectance and add a reflectance, or I mean you can define your texture. For example, I bring it this. If you click and drag it under the cloner, as you can see, it's cover all of its settings in the plane and the cloner. So to define the texture of the, for example, this object here that you can assign it, you can go to I have to explain them better. Double click to your selection, go to the texture, and here we have a mograph texture that we have to explain them in the texture section, but here you can define the color shader. It means, yeah, you can change the parameter of these texture based on the shader that you define. You can add a reflection or anything that you want. It means you can change the parameter of the as you can see, if you go to, for example, the cloner here, we have just changed the color. We can not change the reflection or anything that you want. But if you want to change that, you have to assign your texture, your material to your cloner and understand the material that, hey, you can use the color shading setting of that. And of course, we have a shader effector here that I explain it more in because it's very important. You can define the color and shader. Okay, we have an effector and transfer. Okay, you can define it yourself. Go into the plane effector, or don't worry about some settings that I didn't explain it in cloner. We have an interesting lessons that I will give you a lot of example about the cloner, and in those lessons you learn a lot about the small setting and combine them to cloner. Okay, the parameter. Okay, this is on color. Another important part I want to explain in this lesson, just weight transfer, modify clone, and the time offset. And the other setting, I will explain them in its own lesson. Okay, I want to explain the weight transform. The weight transform in a plane effector is for mixing the effector together. In a plane effector, we are going to the field. For this situation, I just want to turn the color on. Box field for changing the strength of the field, changing to the box control. Going to the plane, and in a parameter, here you have a weight transform. Okay. Select the cloner, and I want to assign another effector to this. Which effector? For example, something called random. I will be explaining it. As you can see, as I explained the random, it's assigned the random to that field, effector field here. Okay, but in a random effector, as you can see, it's exactly all the settings of the plane effector. In a random effector, it's automatically its field is in its fall off is in infinite. This is actually, if you go to the plane in parameter, the weight transform actually is a door. For example, if you go into the cloner and effector, as you can see, we have a plane effector, and after that, a random. As you can see, the random is completely over the plane, and we cannot control it. With a weight, we can control it, but in the new version, but for using uh, the, the plane, it's just not working in this version because if you go into the random, we in the previous version we have a fall off here that we can easily change them to, for example, uh, change them to none in a fall off. This is automatically infinite. And we have to, for example, in another situation is, for example, going to the plane first. I want to bring it, this plane, fall off to linear. And as you can see, it's in infinite. We have to choose a linear or box exactly like the size of that, and we can mix it or change it. For doing this, I go into another random. I want to add the box deleted. I want to add another effector, for example, formula or random. As you can see, it goes all of it. But instead of doing that, we can add in this new method. But so you can use it, transform, weight transform. But the better way is we have a linear. For example, we want to add a random in this part. You can add a random and change the shapes and move it together. But I want to add a random exactly in this part. In this section, going to the plane, and instead of going to the effector random, you can add a field random here. And as you can see, it's bring it there. So if you go to the plane, we have a random and a linear, and here's a blending mode. You can, for example, take it to the add. It's add to the plane, and I will be explaining more. Don't worry. In a plane effector, in a random, you can add it and clamp it here. Sorry, I can turn off the clamp min and max. Don't worry about that. Oh, sorry, I'm changing the field. Them, both of them, as you can see. I think, sorry, you have to go to the linear field. Don't be confused. I will be explaining more. You can turn the clamp min or max off. And after that, you can select the linear or the both plane. And as you can see, we have a mixing the random and plane effector to all. Okay, I will explain the field in a separate lesson. Don't worry, just my purpose was that if now you cannot use the weight transform in these new versions anymore. Another interesting setting here that I want to, in this lesson, I want to explain is a modify clone. I pause the video and prepare a scene for you. Okay, I now want to see you how I can prepare this scene. As you can see, I have three different objects in this order, and I want to use the cloner to clone them. Click and drag and bring them all under the cloner. Under cloner, change it to the endpoint and change the number of the object. As you can see, it's iterate them. I explained them before. Oh, no, in the y-axis, no. In this direction, you can change the number of your objects here and bring the size a little more. And as you can see, it iterate them one by one, not randomly. And after that, if you select the cloner and select the plane effector, as said before, it's a y parameter going up, and we need a field for control how a strings or for we need a field. It's this shape that we can control the strings where that strings affect the objects linear. And as you can see, if you change the linear, it just bring them up in a linear field. Okay, in a plane parameter, here we have a modify clone. The modify clone, if you increase it for 100, it means you open the door of the modifying. it's changing the object from, for example, a cube to the torus in its linear. It's changing them. I give you another example of modifying. Don't worry. If you change it, if you increase the number, as you can see up above that, you can change. As you can see, it's changing the cube to the torus here in the hierarchy. If you bring it, as you can see, it's understand that hierarchy, and or you can change between the objects with a plane effector. If you change the number or increase or decrease the number of, for example, 100%, it means you can do it 100% extremes of modifying. Okay, it means you can change the parameter of the object from cube to the torus. Another example that you can better understanding is you can, for example, add a blend object. Segments in a y-axis, we need more. This is a blend object. As you can see, you can bring it, fit to the parent. In this situation, you can add an animation to that or not. It's not important. Okay, we have a cube. We have a cube here that I want to clone it to the 2 and bring it there. For the first cube in a blend mode, we have strength 0. For the second, you can change the strength in this direction, for example. Okay, we bring them both under the cloner. Just in a cloner in a linear, and that's it. Okay, you can change the count to 1. This is 1. Change the count 1. But if you want to change from the modify, this is the modify in a plane effector, for example, select it, bring the plane effector. In a plane effector, we don't need to change the position. In this situation, we want to change the modify clones. It means if you crank it up, as you can see, it's understand the changing the parameter in its object and changing modify with a plane. So we need to move it to linear, go into the field, select the linear. An interesting part happen here. As you can see it, you can change its modification with this. turn it to the on or off. Or you can change the clone to the iteration to the blend, as I said before. Change it to the blend, and after that, if you change the plane effector, it's smoothly go from 0 strength of the blend to the 100. This is an plane in a parameter modify clone. I want to explain it. Modify clone here. That's very easy. So if you have an object that had changed its parameter, then you can use the modify clone there. Another interesting option of that is time offset. Okay, we bring it. Okay. In a bend animation here, set it to the 0. Sorry for that. What happened? To change the parameter, of course. We bring it another one. Can hold and shift. And here I want to change the animation. Set a keyframe here and go into the some frame after and change the position of that. Another keyframe. And as you can see, we have an. Oh, sorry. You have to do it here. I would have to explain them more. I just you have to click on this parameter here. You can click and drag it or delete this animations. Go to the first frame, blend. Sorry for that. 0. Now it's keyframe. Going to this and bring it there, and another keyframe here. And now we have an animation there. We need more faster. Yep. Okay. So we have an animation here, and we can clone this cube as a mini object that we want. No, we want to sort and grid. And as you can see, we have a grid. If you play, all of the objects has its own animation, and they are going all together. But I want to add a plane effector that control the offset of these animations. Going to the plane effector, as you can see, the bringing up. We don't need that position. Just we want to change the time offset up there. Before changing that, you can offset the animation. As you can see, it does not affect because we need to add a field control the shape of it. It's infinite. It's offset all of the objects together, but we need a linear. As you can see, we have a linear and we have an offset for our animation. As you can see, this animation that has no offset, and with a linear, we have an offset for animation. As you can see, you can change the linear like this, and as you can see, we have more offset. This animation happening in 0, and with the offset that you assign in a parameter, for example, 10 frame, with the offset of 10 frame, it will be animated then. For example, the last one in this direction has 10 frame offset. Go to the 9, 8, 5, 4, and to the 0 offset. So the animation happen the 0 frame here and at the 10 frame offset. After that, there. This is a time offset for changing the animation of the plane effector. Okay, nice. Another thing that you want to learn about the plane effector here is a deformer tab. It's very interesting. you can assign the effector not only to the cloner, but also to the objects. For example, I bring a torus here, and you can assign a plane effector to that torus. Interesting. You can bring it below the torus, and then in a plane effector, in a parameter, as you can see, you can change the, for example, scale of that. Sorry. I think yeah, it's correct. For example, position, as you can see, it does not change because you have to assign the deformer to that. Deformer to the object. It means just bring all object at once, but you can change it to the point. And as you can see, this parameter change the point of that. For example, change the position. You can change the scale in uniform of that object, as you can see. For deformer, you can change it to polygon. And as you can see, it's affect the polygon object. This is a plane effector. You can assign it to any object that you want. Or, for example, an interesting thing, you can assign, for example, a random parameter to that deformer. In the deformer tab, you don't need to, for example, the cloner. It's not important. In a random, you can change it to the point, and we have an animation in a random parameter. So you can go to the effector, and then random, you can, for example, change it to the noise. I will be explaining random. As you can see, you can assign the effectors to objects. So in this lesson, you learn how to use a deformer. You can assign it to the polygon or the point if you want it. And here you can control this effect with a linear. It means you can change the linear option here. This direction, it means whole strengths of that parameter in the field assigned to all object. And if you change the shape of the strings, it means the back of that field we have 0% of that effect, the random effect, and in this direction we have 100%. Okay, just I want to tell you this deformer tab is, and after that you can bring the torus below the cloner. Okay, that's it. In this lesson you learn a lot of settings of the plane effector, a lot of other parameter. You learn all of them. I will explain them, don't worry, in order in other lessons. Okay. Hello my friends. To continue these tutorials on YouTube, subscribe us, like us, and hit the bell icon. And now you will be alerted about all of the amazing videos that we release.